Woo! So I'm going to completely disregard anything that I've read into chat up to this point, and I'm going to assume that the outcome of this series is completely in the air, and it's going to be extremely close. As far as I'm concerned, this is going to be the closest... Oh, yeah. Closest match that I've ever heard of. And yes, I have heard about the new expansion pack. I am super excited for Forgotten Empires. It is going to be really cool. I've read up on all the changes, and I'm a frequent browser on Reddit, so I've read all those Civ discussions and whatnot, and I have to say I am very, very excited. I think that it's going to be really, really good for the game, especially in the long run, and I think that I don't know. It's gonna make Age of Empires 2 a lot better, especially since it will tone down the Vikings on water maps a bit. Because I don't know about you guys, but Vikings on water maps for me is a little they're a little overwhelming. And they toned down the Huns sort of overbearing early game a bit, and the unique technologies that they gave the civilizations, I think, add a lot of interesting possibilities for new types of play. I think it makes units like fire ships and whatnot even more useful. Like, it's just a great thing for the game, I think, and it's the people who are behind it are absolute geniuses, and they've got the game's best interests in heart, and I could not be in more support of it. And yeah, I'm so glad that Microsoft decided to go on board with this. It's like a dream come true, really. That they'd come back and they'd look at one of the greatest games, like one of the greatest RTS games ever made, and sort of modernize it and bring it back. I think that Age of Empires 2 has a great future ahead for it, and I'm very excited. Alright. So, without further ado, what are we doing today is the real question. So, I've got a couple hours both today and tomorrow afternoon, about the same time as today. It starts a little sooner tomorrow. And today I'm going to be casting a few games from the Aoe2 HDOZ clans 16, or like Arabia 16 1v1s tournament. Yes, that's what it's called. I got sent the matches between HallisYoScholar and Bomberland, so I'm going to cast that series. I'm going to pretend like I haven't read the chat at all, and I'm going to be super excited and super at the edge of my seat because I have no idea who's going to win this series, and I'm assuming these matches are going to be awesome and close. So yeah, today we're just going to be doing the best of 3 series for the Arabia 16 1v1s tournament hosted by the Aoe2 HDOZ clans. This is HallisYoScholar versus Bomberland, and as an anti-spoiler effort, I will only have one recorded game file on my saved game screen at a time, so you have no idea how many games are going to be in the series. Okay, let's jump straight into game 1. I've been given almost no information about this, so I have no idea. Okay, so this appears to be a Huns mirror match on Arabia. Q! I'm gonna speed past the early game a bit. Let's see how the map looks for both players at the moment. So HallisYoScholar, apparently, he's actually a reasonably good map generation. Actually, both players do. These are, honestly, like, both players could wall up if they so decide to this game. One thing to note is that, there's this stone at the back, which is nice, although HallisYoScholar does have all of his gold at the front, whereas Bomberland actually does have a gold deposit in the back, which is going to be nice. And this area is going to be so easy to wall off, so he's always going to have access to gold in the event that things go wrong, whereas with HallisYoScholar, he will not actually have access to gold in the event that he gets forwarded, for example. And he happens to be completely surrounded by hills, which is just part of Arabia, so getting forwarded here would be quite devastating. Like putting a watchtower like right here could harass the bushes, the lumber camp, and like this gold mine. So HallisYoScholar is going to have to be really, really careful this match if he's going to survive, because the map generation definitely does not favor him at this point. So what we see so far is the standard 6 on sheep and then transition into a lumber camp. We've got the boar coming out from HallisYoScholar right now. Alright, so this is quite good. One thing that you'll note that's a difference between the two players right now is that HallisYoScholar has opted to get his boar much sooner than Bomberland has. And Bomberland actually has 1 additional lumberjack on his lumber camp. He has 4, whereas HallisYoScholar only has 3 at the moment. So this means that Bomberland could get up an earlier barracks if he so desires. Alright. So I'm curious to see if Bomberland... So Bomberland actually has not gotten a single boar yet, and so that's pretty not standard, actually. Typically you get your boar somewhere around like the 11-ish population, and not having it by 14 population is interesting. Because HallisYoScholar is definitely playing a more standard build order, I'd say. One thing that you might want to note is that there's this sheep body here that is actually still decaying because there's no shepherd harvesting this, which is unfortunately a very small waste of food, but every little bit counts in these neck-and-neck pro games. Alright, so we finally have the boar coming in here, so this is good. You'll notice that players will opt to garrison their hunter in the town center when they're luring their boar. And this is to protect, not only to protect the hunter, but to prevent your villagers from their suicidal tendencies, because typically, you know, when you shoot the boar twice and you run back towards your town center, sometimes your villagers will feel the urge to just fight the boar one-on-one without loom, and they tend to lose horribly. Oh my! And I suppose that was one example of it. It's a shame I didn't quite catch that, but HallisYoScholar here has actually lost a villager to the boar, and that is quite significant. One thing that I highly recommend if you are newer at the game is to always get loom before you hunt your boar, and this also applies in situations like there's lag in your online match. Better safe than sorry. You really don't want to be losing any villagers to the boar, otherwise that puts you really far behind. In Pro Age of Empires 2 games, it's the minor differences between the two players, like these little mistakes that add up over the course of the game, that can really make the difference. I wonder if HallisYoScholar here is going to do a little bit of harassment on this hunter right here. Looks like he's opting not to, and that's fine. But one common thing that you will see pros do is they will use their scout cavalry to interfere with the boar lure of their opponent. Alright, so we've got the other boar coming in here right now. And yep, another perfect boar lure from Bomberland right now. So yeah, one difference between the players that we can see right now is that Bomberland never has any sheep decaying while he's harvesting his boar. He is making every little bit of food count, whereas HallisYoScholar is actually harvesting his sheep simultaneously as his boar. And that's okay. That's fine as long as they're saturated significantly enough. But if there's only like one shepherd on them, then you're losing an awful lot of food to the just the void, I suppose. And yeah, in general, you only want one sheep being harvested under your town center at once, and that is because, again, you don't want multiple sheep decaying. You want to make like every little bit of food count. Alright, so Bomberland is going for his second lumber camp right now, and I want to compare the differences in the economies between the two players. It looks like HallisYoScholar is, well, he's keeping up quite well in score. He appears to be, well, behind by 3 population, and that means that Bomberland has 3 more villagers, and that's going to make really all the difference in this. Alright. Now let's compare the economies that they have. So here we've got HallisYoScholar. Okay, for some reason all the stuff on the minimap's gone. He's got 12 shepherds, and he's got only 4 lumberjacks. And if you compare this to Bomberland, Bomberland actually has 11 lumberjacks. And I think that's going to be pretty significant, because as he gets to the feudal age, like he's putting down his barracks right now, of course, and then he's going to be able to put down 2 additional feudal age military buildings with no sweat whatsoever, because his economy is heavily focused on wood. One thing that you want to do when you're playing on these maps like Arabia is that you want to, as you're going towards the feudal age, is to really start shifting your economy towards wood so that you can support all these extra buildings that you're going to need. I do really like how HallisYoScholar here is walling right now, and this is quite important. You'll notice that he's walling towards the top of his hills, and that's what you really want to do. Because remember, in Age of Empires 2, units that are on a higher elevation deal extra damage to units that are on a lower elevation. This includes buildings as well, so you know, these palisade walls take a modestly lengthy amount of time to be killed in the feudal age, but let's say there's a group of archers that has a hill advantage, then those walls will actually just melt so much quicker. So that is definitely one thing to keep in mind. And let's see, HallisYoScholar's got about 200. Yeah, so Bomberland just has a lot more wood. Wow, alright, so he's going for a pretty greedy wall off here. But I think that's a good idea. He's got a lot of wood to kill. So we'll see what both players go into. Perhaps we'll see a stable from Bomberland right now into scouts. I'm not entirely sure. I do like this, though, is that Bomberland is using his scout to attack HallisYoScholar's villager right here. Keep in mind that your scout cavalry actually gains 2 extra attack damage when they get to the feudal age, so they become a much more potent fighting force. Alright, so I do like how this wall-off is complete over here. This is going to be quite nice for defense. The idea is that you don't necessarily need to get in a complete wall-off, but that you want to force your opponent to sort of come in through this one choke point so that it's much easier to defend. I like the choice of having a spearman here by your lumber camp. I think that's always a good idea. Looks like both players are indeed going for scouts, as I thought. But yeah, you usually want a few spearmen around your base in case of scout cavalry, because spearmen really do a lot of damage to those scouts. And you want to position those spearmen near your lumber camp and your exterior resources to really do some damage. I do love that Bomberland will actually be... He might actually be completely walled off by the time that the scouts from HallisYoScholar get here. Actually, I'm sure he will. So yeah, this is going to be quite significant. We can already tell at this point that Bomberland has a pretty modest lead, and he's playing this phenomenally. This is a pretty greedy wall-off, of course, but it's going to pay off. He is now completely immune to this scout rush, and as a result, you know, he doesn't even need to make any spearmen at all. Whereas HallisYoScholar's base is still open, which means that he needs these spearmen. Alright, so this is really cool. We'll notice that Bomberland here is really using that hill advantage to its fullest potential. And this is going to be extremely dangerous for HallisYoScholar, and he recognizes this, so he's going to go wall this gap off right now, and that is a brilliant move on his part. And that is absolutely what he should do in this situation. Because there's no way that he can engage Bomberland on this hill. Bomberland is just camping the top of this hill, and he knows that he'll win that fight with the hill advantage. Of course, though, he has to be incredibly wary of this spearman. Yeah, alright, so Bomberland is finally in. It looks like this villager has not finished that wall off. Not a huge deal, but we're going to see some pretty significant eco damage here to HallisYoScholar. These villagers are going to be taking some damage. He's got to watch these scouts, though, because those spearmen do like 12 damage a hit to scouts or something ridiculous. They kill them in like 3 hits. Oh, so this apparently must not be walled off all the way, which is one thing to keep in mind, so I'm sure Bomberland will patch that hole right now. But a little bit of sloppy micro over here that that scout is indeed dead. Alright, I do like how HallisYoScholar right now has noticed that his opponent is indeed walled off, so these scouts are really going to be useless in this situation. And he's already transitioning into an archery range, which I think is smart. The idea in these Arabia games and whatnot, when there's some sort of feudal age combat, is you don't want to heavily invest in units that cost food unless you absolutely have to. So in this case, you know, scouts cost 80 food, and the idea is that you don't want to be stuck in the feudal age forever. You want to be able to go to the castle age, and to go to the castle age you need 800 food and 200 gold. That's a lot, so you want to really hold on to your food, because you can't spend, you know, if someone gets to the castle age before you, the tech advantage is going to be massive, and that could make all the difference. Alright, HallisYoScholar is attempting to worm his way in here again, but he is going to not actually be able to get in at all. And that's why I like that he walled up completely, and I expect to see archers from him, yeah. And we'll probably see archers from HallisYoScholar as well. Archers are a common thing for Hun players, or just really any civilization to transition into in the feudal age, because archers only cost wood and gold, and it's pretty easy to stockpile 200 gold, but stockpiling 800 food is really hard, so you'll find that archers are a really common one. And in addition to that, as you get to the Castle Age, you can immediately research the Bodkin arrow at the blacksmith, which grants 1 additional range and attack damage on your ranged units. Well, not all of them, but most of them. And the crossbowman upgrade at your archery range for a very, very vicious and effective timing attack, which you'll see all the time in competitive Age of Empires. So yeah, this wall off here is nice, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit more because, again, he's forcing a choke point so that his opponent will have to engage in an unfavorable situation. And in this case, the situation is this town center, actually. You'll see that pro players all the time try to use their town center as a sort of makeshift ghetto gate in the early ages of the game. And this is because you never want to engage anyone or walk under an enemy town center because your units are so squishy in the feudal age that you'll just absolutely lose so much of your troops. So it's a great way to, be able to walk guys in and out, but prevent the enemy from going in here. So I really do like this wall off here. Force him to walk under this town center if he wants to harass that eco. Seems like a good game so far. Both players are reasonably evenly matched. HallisYoScholar is a bit behind due to a slightly sloppier opening, but he definitely knows his stuff, and it really does show. I think, though, that the nail in the coffin is what happens right now, which is that Bomberland has set up his eco in a way that he has just advanced the Castle Age at this point, and HallisYoScholar is nowhere near the Castle Age, and yeah, this HallisYoScholar has opted to add some skirms on top of this, and he invested in more scouts than Bomberland did. And what this means is that HallisYoScholar is favoring the early feudal war. And it's really, really risky to go to the Castle Age, because again, that's a period of time in which you're incredibly vulnerable. But yeah, these palisade walls are really doing work, and I love this choice of the watchtower here by Bomberland. That's a brilliant move. He really needs to protect this gold mine here, because if he loses that gold income, he's basically lost, so... Yeah, and I do like that HallisYoScholar is trying to go man mode right now and try and end it before Bomberland advances. I'm sure that he's aware that Bomberland has already started researching the Castle Age. You can typically tell that by a steep drop in the score of your opponent, and if you don't have the scores on your screen, of course, you can press F4 when you're playing Age of Empires 2, and the scores will pop up, or you can click this little banner icon. Okay, so the 3 ranges and whatnot, this definitely signifies that he's going to go cavalry archers. Curious to not see fletching from either player, right? Okay, well, there's fletching. Of course, of course. Alright, yeah, so this early aggression is going to be completely denied by these palisade walls, and that just goes to show that walling is super, super important. And of course, using your buildings in a strategic location like this, you can use your buildings as a wall as well, because they're pretty tanky early on. So anyway, yeah, this early aggression is not working out because of these palisade walls, and I think it is too little too late at this point. A really, really nice try by him, but the Castle Age has started now, and I expect to see the crossbowman upgrade and some of that bodkin arrow action. Is he going straight into cav archers? And the crossbowman? Alright, well, Bomberland's army will get routed right here, that is for sure, but the tables will turn on HallisYoScholar very, very shortly due to this massive tech discrepancy. Any bodkin arrow? Yeah, bodkin arrow's coming out, so at least he'll do the bodkin arrow. I still really, really love how HallisYoScholar decided to go man mode here because, he knew that he was in a really precarious situation. Bomberland has started advancing to the Castle Age, and his only option is to end him beforehand. Unfortunately, though, it looks like he is going to throw away a bunch of his guys right here. But yeah, if he got through that palisade wall sooner, he may have won this game, actually. Bomberland really didn't have much of a military because he invested all of his money in the Castle Age, but unfortunately, these palisade walls just proved to be really, really effective, and honestly, the game-winning factor here. Usually what wins these Arabia Wars is the tech advantage, typically. And yeah, Bomberland's just base defense with these palisade walls has allowed him to stall long enough to go to the Castle Age. And yeah, HallisYoScholar has a great wall-off as well, but he opted to go for a heavy feudal war instead of just trying to go to the Castle Age pretty quickly like Bomberland did. Bomberland noticed that his scouts did basically nothing, and he was like, I'm not going to be able to do anything in the feudal age, so let's just go to the Castle Age and see if we can use some siege weapons and these much better units to really put a dent in HallisYoScholar. So this is looking pretty bad at this point. HallisYoScholar does have some guys. It looks like he does not actually have fledging. One thing that you should do in this situation is exactly like Bomberland did, which is like emergency watchtower action to really protect this gold mine, because if you lose your gold income, it is absolutely over at that point. Alright, so I expect Bomberland to like sit over here perhaps, harass some of these lumberjacks, or just do that. Yeah, so this is going to force HallisYoScholar to really move his eco, and that's really devastating. Unfortunately, the map generation is definitely not in HallisYoScholar's favor, that is for sure here. Bomberland has a much better map generation. HallisYoScholar is just incredibly vulnerable to harass, being completely surrounded by hills on all sides, and he doesn't really have a wood area that he could really safely chop at this point, and that's going to be extremely fatal. HallisYoScholar does have bloodlines though, and Bomberland does not. I love this decision because this means that he's going to win all these one-on-one cavalry archer, wars. And however, he does not have the numbers for this, and HallisYoScholar wisely recognizes that the game has slipped a bit from his control. Really good game from both players here. We can see that the level of play in this game is significantly better than the stuff that I was seeing in round 1 and whatnot. So I'm quite satisfied with how this match went. It's a shame that the map generation and whatnot was a teeny bit uneven, but hey, some great play from both players here, and Bomberland showing us that palisade walls win games, and having that tech advantage, whoever gets the castle age first can really make a dent in his opponent. You either have to capitalize on your opponent's vulnerability when he's going to the castle age, or you're probably going to lose, unfortunately. So anyway, good game. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As usual, don't forget to check out my Twitter, Facebook, blah 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 blah. And let's go check out the achievements. Alright, yeah, both players had the same size, largest army. It's just that Bomberland was in the castle age, so his troops were just they were stronger. Both players were pretty even though, which was nice. It was nice to see. It's just this difference of 3 minutes and 30 seconds worth of castle age time that Bomberland got allowed him to get just a lot more cavalry archers out sooner, which really did make the difference. Apparently there was a scouting discrepancy as well. But yeah, both players were quite even, honestly, as you can tell from the timeline, as both players were quite even, and the game really didn't slip from HallisYoScholar's grasp at all until this fateful moment when Bomberland hit the castle age much sooner. Yeah, it's just because HallisYoScholar had a huge army here, but he just couldn't use it at all, unfortunately, due to those palisade walls. Alright, so in just a few minutes, we're going to jump straight into Game 2, so stay tuned.